Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast of overcomers and useful information to better our daily life and mental well being. I am your host, Ron Rapaport. I would like to thank all our listeners, viewers, and our sponsors and supporters for making the podcast such a success. Now, the podcast may also be accessed through our website, itsawrapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and unique products and services offered from our sponsors, as well as the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our guests have authored that can be purchased from Amazon. My guest today is Lane IgoudIn. Lane is a Los Angeles-based writer, blogger, and proud dad of two kids who writes about adoptive parenting, fatherhood, LGBTQ families, as well as faith and spiritual growth. Lane is a graduate of California State University, Long Beach, and Stanford University. He teaches English and linguistics at Los Angeles City College. Lane has recently authored his candid and poignant memoir titled A Family, Maybe Two Dads, Two Babies, and the Court That Brought Us Together, detailing Lane and his husband Jonathan's fraught path through the Los Angeles County foster to adopt process. Welcome, Lane, to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Ron.
Oh, we're glad to have you. What was your vision in your early years to want to be a dad, and how many kids did you want back then?
Well, it's interesting that growing up, I knew I was gay, but I also saw a vision of myself in my future as a father and as a father of two kids, a single dad with two kids. Well, that didn't quite happen because I've been with my partner, my husband, for almost 30 years now. But I am a father, and we do have two wonderful children.
Okay. And so that was something you always wanted, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there are various options out there to adopt.
Mhm.
Please tell us about those options and why you chose to pursue the foster adopt process in Los Angeles County, which, by the way, has, as you know, one of the largest foster systems out there in the country.
Not one of the largest.
The largest.
Yeah, yes. Los Angeles County had and still has the largest foster care system in the country. At the time we went into the adoption process, I should say at the time we decided to start a family, my partner Jonathan and I.
Yeah.
There were multiple venues available to us. We could have gone through surrogacy. We could have adopted internationally. We could have done a private adoption. But we really wanted to go the foster adoptive route because we strongly believed that we wanted to really open our home to one or two kids from this very community. We were aware of the need for homes, for families, for the kids, and that's what we wanted to do. So we went in with with the idea of repairing the world, tikkun olam, as we say in the Jewish tradition. And that's what was really driving us at the time. We were two professionals looking to open our home to one or two kids.
Going through that process, that foster process, did you have any clue from anybody that might have told you the obstacles, the difficulty
Mhm.
you might ensue?
Well, we joined a club, the club of gay dads here in Los Angeles, and we did meet quite a few, but we really didn't quite expect. We really didn't have much of an idea what was going to be like. And that was the main reason I decided to write a book about it because as we went into the process, things began to go wrong, really wrong. And I thought I should document our experience and share it with other parents, whoever they are, as to what it's like to actually adopt from a foster system, especially when things don't go the way you planned them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we had friends. We still have friends who have adopted relatively painlessly from the system. I would say from the placement of a child to the signing of adoption papers would take maybe 7 or 8 months, and there weren't any obstacles along the way. We also had friends who lost their children to the systems that basically they were raising their kids, and then the kids were taken from them and sent back to their birth families sometimes with some catastrophic results.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a crapshoot.
Okay.
But if you want to go into the system, and if that's something that you consider, you should really arm yourself with resources. You should reach out to other parents. You should read the books. You
Yeah.
should check out websites, and hopefully my book would be a resource for you as well.
And we have to tell our audience that this process, I believe, started in the early 2000s, correct?
For us, yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
would I
For
would say
you.
so. I mean, what's interesting is when I started to do research, preparing for my book, um, I, um, I went really way back. I was curious about where the whole idea of adoption as a legal process, began, because adoption is actually a relatively rare form of family building around the world, because the American culture, and we have about 5 or 6 million adoptees in the United States. It's really rare. You don't really see much of that in the West or in the East. The idea that you can raise someone else's child as your own,
Yeah.
that is really, really popular in this culture and common, but not so common around the world. So the first state to pass an adoption statute was the same state that would pass many of the liberal laws as we know them, and that would be Massachusetts. I think it might have been the first state to abolish slavery and to allow interracial marriage. So all these things, and the same-sex marriage in 2004. So it was the first one, but it also set the precedent for some things which other states would copy later on,
Yeah.
which I don't think, having gone through the process myself, I don't think really the best way to go about things. One of which is that the child is treated as property. So the child is the property of his or her or their birth family, and therefore the system is designed to do everything possible to return the child to the family. Unfortunately, it tries to apply this rule no matter what, even when the birth family is really not ready to receive the child or really not capable to raise that child. And this is what my book is really about. It's about what makes a parent, what makes a family, because my book is really not my life history. It's the history of a process which took almost 3 years and a lot of uphill battle to keep the children that you're raising since birth in our case.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's really documenting. It's the sort of the battle to preserve the family that is there for the child to grow up in.
Okay, so in other words, the two children that you adopted, I believe they're girls,
Right.
uh, were adopted at what ages when you got them?
Um, our older daughter was 12 months when we met
Okay.
her.
Okay.
She was still crawling. She was very much an infant. And then so we took her in from a foster home which she was already in. We weren't the first home that she was actually placed in. We were the second home.
Yeah.
So the first year of her life was pretty rough. And believe me, it affects children. That
Oh
early
yeah.
childhood trauma affects children for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. We on the podcast here, on the podcast have had
Mhm.
dealt with that subject of foster care. So yeah, we're
Yeah,
aware of that.
yeah, yeah. And I would say it's not even, sometimes it's the number of placements, sometimes it's the length of placements, sometimes it's the families they're in. So in any case, so yeah, we took her in with an intention to adopt her, because everything was pointing towards, the upcoming adoption, because she really didn't have much of a birth family, and her birth mother disappeared, kind of abandoned her in the foster home where she was in. But then the birth mother returned, and she claimed her daughter, and then she came back pregnant. And the county asked us if we would take the baby, the sister of the girl that we were raising. And of
Right.
course, we said yes. So the baby was placed with us at birth.
Okay.
So we ended up raising two sisters. Um, and the process went in all different kinds of directions
Yeah, we'll get
with the
into that.
appearance of the
Yeah.
mother and the birth father of one of them, and the anyways, that's yeah, I write quite a lot about it.
That's nice that you could get two sisters like that. That's really great, you know.
That's what it ended up being, but it was never a given, Ron, because we almost lost. Well, we came close to losing our younger daughter four times in this process. Once it came as close as the social worker telling us that she won't be here on Friday, on the Friday that she won't be with us on Monday because there would be a court date, and they were going to send her at that time to her birth father. And I had to give notice at daycare that basically that we were withdrawing her. And at that point, she was over 1 year. Yeah, she was about I think 13 or 14 months, and would be the only parent she's ever known.
Sure. She bonded with you.
Um,
Yeah.
so it would have been traumatic for her, it would have been traumatic for her sister, and it would have been very traumatic for us, her round the clock 24/7 parents, and us as a family. So this was just one episode. There are many other crazy things that happened along along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, but but I would say that during that time we faced a double stigma. Um, and first of all, as foster adoptive parents, because as we were treated as foster parents, we're treated as foster parents, we're treated as sort of like non-related entities raising children,
Right.
and so we're kept out of the process, out of the decision-making process for the children that we're raising, and so their present and future were being decided by the judge,
Yeah.
the county council, who was not representing the children, who was protecting the interests of the county and protecting the county from being sued, right? By the birth parents and their counsel, and they had separate attorneys, and by the children's attorneys. And of all these people, no one present in the courtroom except for the birth parents would actually ever meet these children. So everything is being decided by basically people making their judgments based on the files in front of them, and they have many files in front of them. They have hundreds of cases that they're working with, and so it's a very impersonal process while we are raising these kids
Yeah.
day after day, month after month, as in our case, year after year, 24/7, and we're not part of the process. We even hired an attorney to go into the courtroom and demand something called the de facto parent status, so it could be part of the case. And we were basically, our motion was denied and we were thrown out of the courtroom within 3 minutes. So this is what you deal with when you're trying to adopt. And so you begin to try to build some relationships with some parties in the courtroom that which might be sympathetic to the kids and to your family, and try to build on that.
Yeah. Now, what was the history of gay couples adopting at the time you were doing it in the early 2000s under the radar? And how has it changed over the years, especially with the passage of the Respect for Marriage Act?
Well, I can tell you a lot of things. We'll be here for till the morning. But what I really want to tell, we were there during a very important time. That we were during the time of the transition, I should say. We were part of the first generation of out gay parents. And I would say if you saw a child in a gay household prior to year 2000, most likely that child would have been the product of a marriage, straight marriage, when the father would have left, or some sort of a straight relationship with a woman. So some states, not all, some states began to open their foster care systems to adoption by gay individuals and couples sometime in the 1990s,
Okay.
mid 1990s, late 1990s. Not because they were really, trying to push, the LGBTQ rights, but because there were just so many kids. I mentioned to you that Los Angeles County had the largest foster care system in the country. That means over 30,000 kids in foster care in the county, one county alone, which was roughly a quarter of all the kids, foster kids in California, and a large number of portion of the kids in the country. We had at that time, 2004, 2005, there were about half a million kids in foster care across the United States.
Yeah.
So they started to open to kind of like on the, I would say not particularly advertising that, but just kind of quietly opening access to these kids being raised by gay individuals and couples at the end of the last century, early 2000s, but kind of like we were like on the down low, don't really, let's not really talk about it, but we're like kind of in the underground.
Yeah. Yeah. Get it.
But it was also the time, those early 2000s was the time when the gay community was fighting very actively for equal rights, which you mentioned. So first of all, the right for right to marriage, the marriage equality. So we were right there in that fight with with our kids, doing everything everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
Writing petitions. Going to parades, pushing a double stroller, going to the demonstrations, supporting the right candidates. All that was very much part of our daily life. And then what happened? I know you're in Florida, Ron. In California, same-sex marriage became legal in 2008. So we actually adopted our kids. I mean, for the majority of our process, we were two single individuals in the eyes of the federal government and more than half the states in the union, raising two related kids. So when it came to the adoption, we adopted them as two single individuals adopting two related kids. It was a really crazy situation because in 2008 we were able to get married in the state of California, but our marriage was not recognized by the federal government. So we ended up in a sort of a limbo because 5 months later, same-sex marriage was outlawed again in California, and it would stay actually. It would not be allowed again after 2008, all the way till 2015 when the Supreme Court in the United States allowed same-sex marriage in all states. So for the during those, what is it, 8 or 9 years, we were in a kind of a legal limbo, being married in the state, but also
Yeah.
not married outside of the state. And you throw in a couple of kids into this, and the taxes, and all that. It was a very interesting time,
It
a
was
little
it was an
Kafkaesque, a
it
little
was entangled.
absurd.
Yeah. It was entangled for sure.
Yeah, we
Just
actually testified. We continued to participate, and we testified before the Judicial Committee of the U.S. Senate for the original bill, which was the, I forget the name. I think it was called the Respect for, it was something like that, Respect for Marriage Act, which would have gotten.
the It's a Wrap with Rap podcast, guest and acclaimed Australian historical fiction thriller author Paul Rushworth Brown has just had his new book, Outback Odyssey, released. Paul is a true storyteller with a unique journey and a life filled with adventure and diverse experiences. From a foster home in England to a path leading him to playing soccer professionally in Canada in 1972, to reuniting with his father in 1982 in Australia, Paul honed his skills as an educator in 2002, but found his true passion and calling as a writer in 2015. Paul's historical fiction novels are a testament to his authenticity and grit, woven with unexpected twists and turns that will leave the reader breathless. With vivid narratives, he paints a realistic portrait of life in past decades, setting the stage for suspenseful, mysterious, and thrilling tales tinged with romance. Paul's latest novel, Outback Odyssey, will take you on an epic journey through 19th century Australia, blending historical adventure with a powerful mix of survival, identity, and the collision of cultures. This immersive tale follows the lives of those drawn to the vast, untamed land, some in search of opportunity, others fighting to protect what is rightfully theirs. At its heart, the book is about the story of Jimmy, a young Englishman seeking a new life in the Australian wilderness. In the 1950s, which mirrors thousands of British immigrants who sought new opportunities in Australia in the wake of World War II, whereby the Australian government encouraged mass migration to bolster the workforce and expand rural settlements under the Populate or Perish initiative. Jimmy's story reflects the hopes, struggles, and cultural clashes experienced by these migrants as they navigated the complexities of their journey and new home. Through vivid storytelling, Outback Odyssey brings to life the breathtaking beauty and unforgiving harshness of the Outback while exploring the struggles of those who call it home. It is a tale of friendship, betrayal, resilience, and love, woven with the profound questions of who belongs, what must be fought for, and what is truly worth saving. The book, Outback Odyssey, is available in bookstores and online.
Rid of the Defense of Marriage Act of 20 of the 1990s, but it didn't pass. But it passed 10 years later. It passed
Okay.
10 years later.
Can you tell us some of the false ideas people had or may still have about gay people adopting and having effects on the children? Has the landscape improved over the years?
Um, well, um, well, we live in California. We live in a very liberal state, and we live in a large city. So it was quite a few of us out here. But we were quite visible, I would say, in public. Just, people would stare, when they would see two men, an African American and a white man with two Hispanic girls, here we are.
Yeah,
Stare all you want, right? So we were visible, and it was interesting because a lot of things were changing. I describe in my book how we went to the bathroom of a theme park here in Southern California, and I couldn't find any place to change the child because at the time the idea that a man would actually be changing a child in the bathroom was still kind of catching on. So there were a lot of things were in the flux. So I would say we were definitely much more accepted, and it's not such a big deal. But I would say that I'm usually asked, well, do you think that your children lack something because they didn't have a mother in their life? And I just want to kind of bring this on. And I would say that I personally was raised by my grandparents, and I think they raised me to be a good person. And and I believe that any responsible adult can be a caretaker of a child, no matter what their gender is, no matter what their age is, any responsible adult. That said, I also believe that, we were two men raising two girls, and we wanted them to have role models of strong women, not because it would in any way affect their gender or sexuality. It didn't, but because we wanted them to see what it's like to be a strong woman in this particular society at in this day and age. And so my sister was very much present in our lives at the time. And also we surrounded ourselves with a support network, I would say, of the moms in our neighborhood. And we
okay.
still are very, they're dear friends of ours. And they saw other women, strong women raising a family. Some of them are married, some of them are single, whatever. But I think it gave them a very, very good idea of what it's like to be a women of certain valor and certain strength.
Right. I know some people might think there might be a gender identification issue or a sexual orientation issue, with what you were doing, and that's just not the case.
Well, Ron, we would love our kids, whatever they would they would become.
Yeah.
But as it happened, we are two gay dads to two very heterosexual young women. Okay.
Yeah.
And so at this point that not they're young, not now that they're young women, they're 18 and 20, we're dealing with their boyfriends and boyfriends' families. And so this is like a whole new world for us that we
Yeah.
need to learn about. But yeah, I don't think that it in any way changed who they really are.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
and from what I've read, and it's just not an issue. But I know, there's people out there that think, oh, this might be an issue.
People sometimes wonder if there's a stigma, for a child to have gay parents, and I can't really speak for the boys because we didn't raise, but I'm telling you, for a girl to have two dads, it's usually pretty cool.
Yeah, I would think.
Because the assumption is like, oh, you've got two dads who spoil you and adore you. Well, not always. I'm pretty much I'm a kind of a Jewish mother trapped in the body of a gay man in many ways. So I'm pretty demanding, but also very hands-on, and I just speak for myself. But I don't think our kids encountered at any point any sort of prejudice or
Yeah,
stigma because of having two gay dads. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool for a girl to have two fathers.
yeah. Now, when negative comments do arise from outside the family circle, what did you do to educate your children how to deal with it?
Um, maybe it's part of my culture. I'm Russian Jewish. I'm pretty frank with my kids. That I'm not trying to shield them, or I try to explain the world to them, and they certainly grew up in our household with a question why.
Yeah.
It's never because I said so. You have to explain and explain, explain, and so I guess from a young age, we had to explain to them that yeah, there will be people who will not like you because of your family, and or they won't like you because you're Hispanic, or one of them is Hispanic and mixed race. I mean, but it's not your problem; it's their problem.
Right.
You are who you are, and then you're meant to be who you are, and so if somebody doesn't like you, it's they're the ones who are having an issue, not you. So, but I think I also believe that if somebody is bullying you, you need to respond to this, early on,
Yeah.
and be very, kind of approach it directly. So we had a situation with bullying, which had nothing to do with us, being, being their dads, but it's just like there was a bully, and so one of our daughters had to deal with it, and so she and she responded to him, and so he backed off. So I think it's important not to hide and to bring it out in the open.
Okay.
Um,
Uh, Tell us what it's like going through the process of choosing a child in the system that you had to deal with. In other words, when
um,
you went to choose your adopted child, what was that process like?
I would say it's a very American experience in
Okay.
that, you kind of you're walking down the aisle and you select what fits your
Yeah.
requirements. I'm not being cynical, honestly. Um, when you adopt, the child is conceived in the mind. Okay. You decide to have a child. It's never like an oops, oh, I think we're pregnant now. It's not going to happen. It's really not going to happen in a gay couple anyway, to begin with. So you plan for it. And as part of the planning, you go through this process. And this was actually part of our home study that we needed to fill out the 7-page questionnaire it was, I think it was called a child selection worksheet, where you have to go through the kinds of the race and gender and number of siblings, but also health conditions and mental conditions, and is the child a product of an incestuous relationship? Are you okay with this? That, and so you go through and you mark yes, no, or willing to discuss.
Yeah.
So we took us several days to we while we got through this, because and I think it was in a way it was brutal, but I think it was also honest in that we were able to identify the boundaries of what we can do and what we cannot do. There are some physical conditions that we could deal with, and some medical conditions, but there are also some of which we knew, like, we really weren't equipped to deal with, especially because it was just the two of us. We didn't have the
Right.
luxury of having like extended family around us to,
Right. Right.
grandmothers and all that. We didn't have that. It was just the two of us working full time. So, but still, we were open to a lot of things, and yeah. So yeah, there is an element of choice. There is an element of choice. I'll be absolutely honest in that when you foster a child, you can return the child to the county. Because basically, when you foster a child, they place a child with you, but if it's not working out, you call it the social worker, and they will take the child out of your home and try to find another home for them. Um, this was never an issue with us and our girls because we took them in with intention to adopt, and so we decided to basically withstand whatever was coming our way, but fight and fight to keep them. But I do know some other foster families where because of the turbulence that they got into, and it was clear to them that there was no end in sight. There was a lot of uncertainty whether I get to keep the child or not. They decided to send the child back to the county. It happens too. Not in our case, but it happens.
So what's the risk of adopting through the foster system? What is the main risk?
The risk is the whole dilemma in being this sort of a double foster adoptive. Because when you foster a child, you basically are paid, not much, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I can
Believe
imagine
me, it's the
not
yeah, it
enough
was
to
it was
cover a
it
lot
was
of
not yeah,
expenses.
we were yeah. It was helping definitely. I would say what was really helping much more than those relatively low payments was that the state provided our kids with health insurance. This was before Obamacare.
Oh,
So
that's good.
for them to have health care and good health care was
Yeah,
was was really good. Um, so but because as a foster parent you are expected to take care of the child, um, but also be willing to part with the child, to let the child go at any time, any point, because the system wants to send the child back to the birth family. As an adoptive parent, you take the child in to raise them as your own, and so for the rest of your life. So the whole sort of tension between, well, how much will the child attach to you and how much you will be attached to the child, is always there. But to us, honestly, it was never really like we just got attached to these children and we treated them as our own from the get-go. So that's why it was so hard. Because Ron, we were raising these kids, right? Like I said, 24/7, month
yeah,
after month, year after year. So to us, what some judge in some courtroom 20 miles away from us decides to do with his children did not change the nature of our relationship with his children. Just because one day the judge decided to terminate parental rights of the birth parents and open these children to adoption did not change one bit how we felt about our children,
yeah.
you
No,
know?
understood, understood.
So yeah, but to the court, we were foster parents all the way until we actually adopted them. So to the court, they're basically free to be removed at any moment.
Right. So that would be the big risk
That's the risk.
going back to
And
the
if
first
you
parents.
you can wait until basically the children are open to adoption. But the thing is, there's a much smaller pool of children that are available, that are free for adoption. Whereas there's a lot more children that are available in the system while they're still in the foster process. So we were willing to take that risk, but that risk is a huge sort of a question mark in the whole process.
How long does this process take generally, or can't you really answer
It's
that?
hard to say. It's hard to say. Like I said, like we have friends who've gone from the placement to the signing of adoption papers in 7, 8 months.
Right.
Okay. And we also had, our situation was pretty bad. And but we also had some situations worse than ours. I mean, I described in my book one particular situation where the child was taken out of a family, out of a foster adopted family, and placed back with the birth relatives, where there was a history of drug abuse and criminal history too, and the child was killed within 3 weeks. So, and the only reason this story is known is because one of the foster adoptive parents was a publicist who had access to the media and was able to get the story out. Because in a system as big as Los Angeles County, with 30,000 kids then and about 18,000, 20,000 now, um, it just kind of gets swept under the rug. The just the yeah, anyway, that's a whole other thing to talk about. But so it's hard for me to say. And that's
Okay.
the whole thing. It's very, very unpredictable.
Okay.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the process.
So I have to admit, I didn't read your book, uh, but is the book basically for everyone out there who's thinking
Yes.
about going through this?
It's a family building. It's a general interest story. There are a lot more straight foster adopted parents than the gay foster adopted parents out there. And I would say even more now because I noticed that, like today, when you go, when you meet, when you, um, I think it's become more of a matter of class that if you are middle class or above, you will probably go through surrogacy rather than dealing with what we had to deal with. So, yeah, yeah, I think it's a general interest story, and it's kind of in a way it's a core drama. At the heart of it is a core drama. But despite everything I said, I've told you about, despite all the difficulties, I would still encourage your listeners to consider it. If they have an opportunity to foster a child, to adopt a child from the system, do that, because they need you.
Oh,
They need you. There's
okay, and
still a
that's
lot of
kind
kids that need a home, and if you are able to provide that home, do that. It's good for the
rewarding.
children. It's good for you. It's good for your soul.
Oh, sure. Well, kind of leads into my next question. What advice do you have for those wanting to adopt?
Well, as I mentioned before, I would say that you need to expect the unexpected. As you see, there's a lot of uncertainty, so you need to learn about the system and arm yourself with that knowledge.
Right.
I would also say that you should set your own limits, know your limits in choosing a child, and stick to them throughout the process. Um, I would also suggest to not to project your expectations onto your children because you are who you are, but they are who they are, and try instead to um, you know try to build on their natural strengths is what I would say.
Okay.
I would also add, this is something that comes up a lot because people say, well, you're Jewish, your partner is African American, your kids are Hispanic, how does it all work? And I would say that, yes, we have exposed our kids to the Hispanic culture throughout their childhood, with the language, with camps, with art. I mean, we've done all this as much as we could. Um,
Our podcast guest, Dorsey Ross, an inspirational speaker, podcaster, and ordained minister, was born in 1977 with a rare congenital disability known as Apert syndrome, which occurs in only 1 out of 80,000 to 1 out of 160,000 people. Dorsey has authored his autobiography titled Overcomer: Discovering God's Plan Against All Odds. When Dorsey was born, his forehead was pushed outward. There was no usual soft spot or skull opening in the head to stop the brain from growing, leading him to becoming brain dead. Also, his fingers and toes were fused, meaning he had no movement in them. Doctors gave his parents no hope for his survival and advised them to put him into an institution. His parents refused to do that and trusted that God would do great things in Dorsey's life. Throughout Dorsey's life, he has had to overcome a lot of obstacles and trials, such as being bullied, called names such as monster or freak, told his future was bleak and higher education was out of the question for him. Dorsey has undergone multiple surgeries, totaling 68 in all, many in the facial area to enhance his appearance and correct medical issues that faced him due to his disability. This is not a book that is sad or a pity party of why this is happening to me, but rather a book that gives hope and inspiration to everyone reading it that having faith in God's plan for you and dispelling the untruths people may tell you about yourself, good things will be in store for your life. Who is this book for? It is such an encouraging book that everyone should read it, especially those struggling with disabilities, life problems, and doubt. Dorsey shares the incredible story of his life and how he discovered God's plan for his life. Along the way, his story will encourage and inspire you to see yourself the way God sees you and that you are loved and here for a unique purpose. The book, Overcomer: Discovering God's Plan Against All Odds, is available in paperback and Kindle format from Amazon.
At the end of the day, I feel like I might be more excited about it than they are, but that's just an aside. But anyway, so if they want to get deeper into that, they know where to start, where to go.
Yeah.
But I also feel that exactly because their biological roots have been cut, that it's been important for us to, I use the metaphor, to graft them onto our family trees, to bring them into our communities. So we raise our kids Jewish.
Oh,
And today they feel like very strongly as that they're Jewish women of color, which is kind of this new phenomena within my community. So be proud of your culture and share it. Share with your adopted children so that they would know they have a community that is welcoming them. That they're part of. And I would say that again in my situation, we raise our children in the faith, and this sort of interfaith, marriage can work. It takes work, but it can work, and I think it's very important to give that sort of that spiritual foundation to your kids. So, and I would say maybe the last thing I would say is that just enjoy being a parent. It's such a great opportunity to be a child again and to see the world again through a child's eyes. I will never forget the first time we took our kids to the aquarium and the fascination of a 2-year-old with seeing dolphins and seeing the fish in the tank. It's
yeah,
it's just precious. It's just
sure.
precious. That's really what's it about.
Interesting you said that the children were raised Jewish. Your partner, Jonathan, is that,
Yes. No.
did
Mhm.
he convert to Judaism
He
as
did
well?
not convert to Judaism, but he's been supportive. And honestly, ever since we met, we decided that basically whatever you want to bring into the relationship, I will honor it. And so if he would have a Christmas tree in our house,
Okay.
yes, I raised him conservative. We raised him conservative, but we also had a Christmas tree because it was important to John. And they would help him put the decorations on. He loves gospel music. He'll play it sometimes. Fine. I mean, it doesn't bother me. But we had Shabbat dinners and we had all the holidays and yeah. So there's a very direct connection to Judaism, to
Well,
Israel.
the girls get to
So,
get the best of both worlds. They get all the
I
holidays.
think so. I
Yeah.
think so. I think
Yeah.
so. Now that they're adults, okay, I'll just so okay, I'm getting a little personal here, but I raised them conservative because that's where I grew up in a way. But I went modern Orthodox after their bar mitzvahs because that's closer to where I am now. So when it comes to time for high holidays, one of them is dating a Jewish boy who was raised Reform. So trying to kind of navigate all this, which
Yeah.
which services do we go to? But I think it's a good challenge to have. It's a good challenge to have.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
should only be
to
your worst problem, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In the
But
same.
they know where they belong. They know where they're welcome.
Yeah.
The temple that they grew up in had probably half the families were intermarried. So the conversion, the intermarriage was kind of it was very common. So they didn't feel in any way different. Um, so yeah, yeah.
So the legal system, I know, plays a significant role in the process. Can you tell us about the role of the judge, the social workers, and any other people that are part of the legal system that plays into it? How was it dealing with all these people?
It was hard. Um,
Are they coming
first
from the
you
same
first you need,
direction?
I'm sorry, what?
Are they coming from the same direction?
Oh no, no, no. Everybody's got their own agendas.
They do.
Everybody's got their own biases.
Yeah.
And people change. All of the above, all of the above. So the county council, as I mentioned, protects the county. The judge doesn't want his or her cases to be remanded. And social workers come and go. And we had two. The first one was kind of we had, I wouldn't say it was good, but it was basically we had a working relationship with her. The second one we felt was somewhat homophobic, and we had felt this very strong sort of negative vibe coming from her.
Yeah.
So it's all very personal. So people do bring their biases, their attitudes, their agendas into all this, of course. But I was very critical of the judge and of some of the other players in this process while I was in the process. But later on, when I started doing research, and I found that the system is so overstretched and there's so much strain put on these people that I cannot just but feel really compassionate for them, because, let's say the judges, okay, that's an easy one. A judge is not supposed to have more than 160 cases in California in children's court. Our children's court judges may have up to 600 cases
Wow.
to deal with.
There's
So
no way they
it's
can.
like it's if their caseloads are just unmanageable in a
Yeah.
system as big as that, so it's easy to criticize and think there's some sort of a like some sort of an intention to all this. There is no intention. It's just there is a bunch of laws that are passed by very liberal people like ourselves, but also a bunch of people that work in it are really stretched to the limits. They burn out, they change. Like in my book, we get all of a sudden a social worker, no, I'm sorry, a new children's attorney right before a crucial court case, and she knows nothing about the case. She was literally just given the file, and she's going into the courtroom, you know. Um, and or like another story when we came to the adoption hearing for one of our daughters, and the judge said, "Oh, today we are here to for a very happy occasion, which is the adoption of the child Elizabeth." I said, "Hold on, Your Honor, we don't have a child named Elizabeth. We have a we have different children here." So she's like, uh, oh, is that Jenna's daughter? So I realized that after 2.5 years in the process, she really didn't know the children, but she knew the mother. She remembered the
Uh,
mother. She didn't remember the children, but she remembered the mother. So I'm like, it's always been about the mother. It's never been really about the child, all the way to the end of it. So it was kind of sad for me to see that. But in any case, it's complicated. It's complex. Um, I really hope that one day this system will change, but things have not been really changing all that much since the time we went through the process. And this is why I think this book is still relevant, because the system is very much the same
yeah.
at its core as it
It's
as it was
stagnant.
years ago.
Now, I'm going to kind of combine two questions in one. Did the birth mother or father ever reappear in your case? And what are your feelings about the birth mother and birth father?
Um, well, first of all, our adoptions are closed adoptions. So they're not open. So we've had no contact with the birth family
Okay.
ever since their parental rights were terminated.
Okay.
I really hope, I really don't know like where they are, and but I really hope their lives have taken on better turns than what we saw during the process. I really wish them the best, to be honest. Um, the question you asked about the birth mother and birth father. It's probably the first time I actually heard this question, and believe me, I've given about 30 interviews by now. Um, During the process, it would have been very easy to think that the conflict was between the birth mother of our kids and us, but it never was, because the conflict was really between her and her limitations. Because the court gave her so many resources and services to be able to take the kids back.
Yeah.
and and it just wasn't working out.
Yeah.
So, and the further away I moved from that time when we had direct contact with her, the more I began to feel really compassionate about her own plight, and really feeling sorry for all the things that she had gone through, that she would have had to end up in a situation where she lost both kids, where she couldn't parent them, and she lost them both. So it really took but it took me years sort of moving away from that to be able to see kind of a bigger picture. it in no way changes the fact that she couldn't be the parent to them, and that became clear, it becomes very clear through the process. But I I think we still honor her, and I really want my kids to honor her, honor their birth parents wherever they are,
Yeah.
and do not feel they wish they could have been their parents, but they just couldn't, and that's
Yeah.
just the reality. That's just the reality. So they shouldn't hold it against them. People are who they are. They go
Yeah.
through the experiences they do, and then they end up not being able to parent, and that's just how life is sometimes. So we shouldn't hold against them. People just do what they can, and sometimes you can't.
Yeah. How Lane, how are the girls doing now? How old are they and what are they up to?
Well, they're 18 and 20, and we are empty nesting.
Oh, okay.
One of them is living near us, but independently. She started college. Now she's considering going back to college. She's working. We're supporting her. The other one is at a very good school. She's at a university. So she's living on campus, but we're still very much a close-knit family. So so when we see each other, see one another, I would say maybe at least once a month. So we FaceTime. So yeah, so we're still close-knit, but now we're empty nesting. We're also learning to be parents to adult children, and that's a kind of like it's a new stage of parenting, and we're
Sure.
still kind of learning how to deal with that, how to do it. You know,
Yeah.
like you know, they're always a little bit ahead of you. Like you reach this point that let's say they're preteens, and you got this. I got this now. Okay, now they're teens, right? Now I survived my daughter's adolescence. Now they're adult women, and like some, we're still playing catch up to that to
Whole
this
new
stage in
concept.
their lives.
Yeah. Okay. Now the book you wrote is titled A Family, Maybe Two Dads, Two Babies, and the Court That Brought Us Together. What prompted you to write the book? How long did it take? And what do you hope the reader gets out of reading the book?
Um, Well, what prompted me to write the book was there was nothing like it that I could find. Even though I mean, I did consult a lot of sources and I talked to other parents, but there was nothing really about what to do when things go wrong. So I thought I should document it and share it, share this experience, no matter whatever the outcome would be, because it wasn't clear we were going to keep the children, one or both, and what was going to happen, the whole thing. So. But what happened was, I had a couple of boxes. I was throwing all the court orders and faxes. Back then we had faxes, and things like that. I had the hundreds of emails. I kept a diary. But once the process was over, I couldn't write it. I just couldn't face. I was in kind of a PTSD, state after all this that I couldn't really
Yeah.
face writing about it or even touching any of this. So I didn't write it for about 4 years. It was about 4 years later that I felt I was becoming ready to reopen the files and start writing. And then it took me about 8 years to write the draft. Um, so yeah, I would say there was what another factor which drove me to writing was anger at the way we were treated as foster adoptive parents and also to some degree as gay parents, but it's probably mostly as foster adoptive being so powerless, being so unwanted and looked down upon throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
While we were the ones who were the real parents,
Sure. And you're
really the
trying to
real
do good.
parents.
You're trying to do good.
Yes, yes,
You know.
yes. And so that was like, no, I really, even if you're not interested in adopting from foster care, just kind of to see how families like ours really struggle, and the way we're treated, I thought, I need to share this story.
Sure. Sure.
So that's what really prompted me to write.
Now, with so many kind of wrapping this up, with so many kids in the foster system, what is your hope for the future of the adoptive process to say improve? What is your hope of that?
We had a very good law passed in the 1990s, which says that basically every time the state removes a child from home and detains that child, there should be what they call a concurrent track process set in place, where there's one track where basically you want the child to go back to their birth family, and of course that's what we all want. As a society, that's what I would really wish for the child, is to go back to their birth parent if it's possible. But also there should be the second track, the concurrent track, which is what to do if this doesn't work out. So we were the concurrent track. We were the foster adoptive track that the kids were in, but we were never treated anywhere near equally as an option. So I would really hope for the child welfare system to honor and respect and provide as many resources to the real families in which children are living and growing up, even if at some point they will not be able, they will go back to the birth parents. But in the meantime, treat us, with fairness and respect that I think we deserve, which is not what was happening. So I hope that at some, one day it will change. But I haven't seen that change, to be honest. But I'm hoping for that change. That's what I'm advocating for.
Yeah, let's all hope for that. Can you tell our audience what resources are out there if they're considering adoption?
I have a page with some resources on my website.
Okay.
But there is a website called adoption.com, which is the world's largest adoption platform for the adoptive parents. And I actually wrote a guide for foster adoptive parents, just kind of to explain the different policies and why things are the way they are. Which was published by adoption.com. A few years ago. I think that's a good place to start. I'm sure there are also some local resources. A lot of states and local counties and local child welfare systems conduct orientations where you can learn more about how things are exactly where you live. So yeah,
Okay.
there's quite a lot of resources out there.
Can people contact you? Is there a way to contact you?
Well, I have a website, which is Lane
Okay.
IgoudIn, laneIgoudin.com, LANEIGOUDIN.com,
Okay.
well, which is pretty active. You can see what I'm doing, and what's happening with the book, and you can also contact me there. But you can also find me on social media on Instagram and Facebook at Lane IgoudIn, Lane IgoudIn. Send me an email, laneIgoudin@gmail. I always love hearing from people. And you can find my book. The book came out with a traditional publisher, which is based at Portland State University. So it's distributed to regular stores, I guess some stores, but you can also find it online on Amazon and Bookshop. Or on my website.
Okay. So if somebody wants to contact you, there's a contact on your website.
Yes, yes, there
Okay,
is. Yeah,
great. I
yeah.
want to thank you, Lane, for being on the podcast and enlightening us about this important topic. And I wish you and your family good health, good happiness, going forward, and good luck with your writing and any other projects that come up. Feel free. We'll have you back. We'll talk
Thank
about
you,
it.
Ron.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at it's a wrap with rap at gmail.com. Our Facebook group, we have about 2,000 people in there. It's a
Mm.
private group, so if you want to join, you can email me. It's a wrap with rap. Instagram, it's a wrap with rap podcast. We're on Twitter, or X as it's known, at rapper, WRAPPER 130. Our website is it's a wrap with rap.com, and all the episodes are on YouTube. It's a wrap with rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening or viewing. Please stay safe out there. And for now, it's a wrap.